I'm going to get started with this month's webinar then. It looks like everyone is in the meeting now, or mostly everybody. So welcome everyone. I hope you've all had a good start to the month, and welcome to this Back to Basics DCS webinar. First, we will start with some basic housekeeping rules. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared with all registrants later this week. So if you'd like to share the recording with a colleague who was unable to attend, or if you'd like to revisit any of the content covered in today's session, you can. A copy of the slides and the Q&A will also be sent to you via email this week. The audio for this session is available through your computer speakers or by dialing in by phone. If you experience poor sound quality at any time, through your speakers, you may wish to try dialing into the session by phone instead. You can do this by accessing your device settings at the top of your screen within the Teams session, clicking the three dots for more settings, then select device settings, and a device settings area will open on your right-hand side. Everyone will remain muted throughout the session. However, there is a chat and a Q&A section which can also be accessed via the top of your screen within Teams. We'll be monitoring this throughout the session, so please feel free to submit any questions or comments you may have at any time. And then there will also be an open Q&A at the end of the session. We are joined by Claire Gordon, who is one of the product managers here at CLA, and Margaret Heiligenstadt, our Education Public Sector Coordinator, and me and Stephen, your Product Support Advisors, as usual. Unfortunately, Imogen Wiley, our other product manager, is currently off ill, but sends her regards, and hopefully she'll be here for next month's webinar. Next is our agenda. First, we have an overview of who and what the DCS is for with Claire. Then we have a DCS request demo with Stephen. And after that, we have the higher education license Back to Basics with Margaret. Then to round things off, we have a small update on EHES pricings and then the Q&A. Now over to Claire for the DCS overview.
Cool. Thank you very much, Monica. Good morning, everybody. As Monica says, I'm not Imogen, but I am just going to step in today as she's not feeling very well and just give you an overview of the DCS for anyone that is not familiar with the system. So as it's September, I'm told that it's been, well, it's not September anymore, it's October now, but as it's just recently been September, I'm told it's been a very busy time on the help desk, and there have been a lot of queries from people either new to their roles that aren't familiar with the DCS and its functions. So the support team thought it would be a sensible idea to go through the basics of the platform, walk you through what it's used for, who can use it, and how a typical request works. So I will just spend a few minutes talking you through it in theory, and then I will hand over to Stephen, who will give us a demo on how things work in practice. So what is the digital content store? So at its core, it is a centralized workflow tool to make compliant digital copies under your CLA license. It's a tool to help you stay license compliant by checking permissions, extent limits, and ownership. And the DCS also automatically applies copyright notices to every extract you use and put through the system. It's also a repository of crowdsourced book chapters and journal articles, now with the addition of over 170,000 titles of publisher original content, which is fantastic. And it is also a tool for running internal reports for your institution, which will give you insight into the usage of the service and, really crucially, student access and engagement with the resources that you're sharing. And finally, it's a tool for giving students compliant resources and an engaging student experience via the student reader. So let's move on to who the DCS is for. So primarily the DCS is for your library and or your digitization team, however that looks at your institution. So all DCS users are given the same level of access, and you can set up as many users as needed. So that caters for smaller institutions that may have a team of 1 or 2, right up to bigger institutions that might have 10 plus or even more. So academics can also interact with the DCS via our integrated academic request form. So you, as a library or digitisation team member, will arrange access to the form for your academics, but they don't actually gain access to the DCS system itself. And the same goes for students, who will have access to the content via links generated by the team who use the DCS, and they will then be able to view the content via your choice of authentication, whether that's via Shibboleth, open access, easy proxy, or IP. So the only people that actually see the system, as Stephen's going to show you very shortly, would be your library team, and then the academics and students interact with various parts of the process, but don't actually have access to the system itself. So what can you do in the DCS? You can do a number of things, the first of which being you can create new requests or action submitted academic requests. You can check permissions as part of the request journey to see what you can and can't copy. You can review active or incomplete requests of your own and of your colleagues. So one of the great things about the DCS is if you start a request, but then you go on leave, you're on holiday or you're not very well, a colleague of yours can finish that request off so it doesn't get held up. You can also run reports on DCS requests and student engagement with content. So as I mentioned, see who's looking at what and how many students are viewing pieces of content. And you also have a number of optional reviews of your own settings. So you don't have to do any of these things. You don't have to set up lecturers or add IP ranges or your institution's logo, but it gives you the option to personalize your account if you wish. You can also create and manage users, create and manage courses, both manually and or in bulk. And last but by no means least, you can automate your CLA annual reporting. So this is what a typical request journey looks like. If you're not familiar with the DCS, don't be alarmed by this slide. Stephen is going to show you what it looks like in practice very shortly, and I'm sure it will all make a lot more sense if you're not familiar with it. So the first step is an academic submitting a digitisation request. So this can either be done by our academic request form, offline, and when I say offline, I mean in an email to the library or via your own bespoke form that you may have created, or via a reading list management list API integration. Once that's been done, the DCS user receives the request, and then if you're using an academic request form or the request has come from an RLMS integration, the DCS user picks up the request in the DCS, reviews it and progresses it to an active request. And if you're receiving the request offline, for example, via email, the user then creates the request manually. Again, both of which Stephen will show you very shortly. So regardless of how the request is received, once the request is at an active request status, the user goes through the relevant license checks. So that's checking permission, ownership, and extent limits. Then they will move on to checking to see if a scan is already available in the DCS. So this comes back to our repository of content. So if somebody else at an HEI has already created the scan that you need, so say pages 1 to 10 from a specific work, and it's what you're looking for, you have the option to use that scan if you want to. There's no obligation. You can always upload your own scan, or you can order via eHES or use part of our Born Digital collection, whichever works best for the piece of content you're looking for. Once a piece of content has been selected, you will then share the content link with the requesting lecturer, who in turn then shares this with their students, and then the student can have access to the content for that academic year. So that is what a journey looks like in theory, and I am now going to hand over to Stephen, who has the much more exciting job of showing you how it works in the DCS itself. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Claire. Just share my screen now. Just bear with. So can you all see the screen that I've just shared?
Yep, looks good.
Just a few people, for anyone in the chat, could you just confirm that you can see this? Got a hand up there.
Seeing lots of thumbs up, so I think you're all good, Stephen.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. Cool. So yeah, as Claire said, I'm going to now walk you through the typical request journey in the DCS. So the first place you'll land when you come to the DCS is the dashboard. That's got a lot of fields on it, but a lot of them are just simply shortcuts to other places. So to process the content request, as Claire said, your starting place will depend on how the request comes through. If it comes from the academic request form, it will be here in the new academic requests. If not, you will add them manually. So I'm going to walk through the process of adding a request manually, assuming that the lecturer has sent an email. So if we go to search and discover, when it wants to load, of course, there we go, yep. So you can search from here, and as you can see, you've got the option of searching by ISBN, title, author, or publisher. And you can also select whether you want it to be born digital only or not. So of course you can search broadly, but if you know what you're looking for, you can just simply put the ISBN in, and I've got one saved, so I'll just use that. So if there is a record for the title, that's what you'll see here. Of course, there may not be a record for it on the DCS. If that's the case, you can simply add a new record. So just clicking create here will show all the mandatory fields that you need. So as long as you've got the ISBN, the total page count, the title, the author, publisher, and the page range that you're looking to use, that's all that's needed. Everything else is optional. But we do have a record for this one here, so I'll go ahead and use that. So at this point, the system does a check of the title against our check permissions tool. If it has a green tick, that means that it's part of the CLA mandate and you can share it under the terms of the license. So I'm just going to go ahead with this one. So at this point, you would enter the page range you want. So I'm going to go randomly for 20 to 30. So this then creates the active request page. So if the title is a born digital title, which this one is, you will see the little green symbol here that shows that it is. And you'll see the key metadata pulled up on the screen in front of you. If there's anything missing, you've got the option to add anything. So there may be a subtitle you want to add, or an edition, publication location, and so on. But for now, I'll leave that as it is. And then you can add details of the specific chapter or extract that you're creating if you want to. So if it were the case that the extract you're making was a single chapter, you could say, I'm requesting chapter 4. It's called XYZ. And if the chapter author might be different from the rest of the book, so you could put that in as well. I will leave that for now. So the next part of the journey confirms the permissions and ownership. So the first lines of the section show the publication and rights holder information. And the next part is check permissions integration that we've seen before. So this is covered under the CLA license, so there's a green tick there. Now, if the title is not covered, you have the option to override. This one is, but if the title were not covered, but you had a permission to use it, you could go ahead and click the option that would work here. So for instance, you might have paid a copyright fee, or it might be catalogued. So you could use the override for that. And then finally, we would put it into a course. So I'll bring up, I've got a lot of test courses here because this is the demo site, so I'll use that one. And then you have the option of adding a lecturer. What this means is that when the request is finished, it will email the link automatically to the lecturer in question. But this is not a necessary step. You don't have to do this. So I don't think we have any saved to this course, so I'll leave that as it is. And then we come to extent limits. So the CLA license permits HEIs to use 10% or 1 chapter per course per year. And this is where we calculate the usage. So you'll see here the extent of the book, the number of pages used in the extract, and what that is as a percentage of the total. Now, the percentage we're using is within the 10% limit, but if it were not, so let me update this. So let's say that we were requesting slightly more. Let's say that would take us over 10%. Yeah. So this here would take us over the 10% range. But you do have the option, if the extract that you're making is still 1 chapter, but it's slightly over 10%, you can just click here to confirm that you're still using 1 chapter, and that'll be fine. And then once that's done, in the final section, you'll assign the actual content to the request. Now, there are several ways to do this. The first is that if you want to pay a copyright fee or simply want to outsource your scanning, you can order it from EHES. So this will bring up a little menu here, and you just confirm everything here, that you want to use, and then place the EHS order. And that will send a ticket through to us at the help desk, and then that will relay to the British Library, who will receive the order, and within 4 days they'll confirm whether they can fulfil the order or not. If they can, they'll send it to us, and if there's a cost associated, this one's a scan only, but if there were a copyright fee, they'd confirm that as well, and then we'd upload it to DCS for you, and you could review the order and then accept it. Normally this is done automatically, but at the moment the British Library, of course, are still rebuilding their systems after the cyber attack a couple of years ago, so it's a semi-manual process, which Monica and I manage. The next thing to do is, the next option is that if the title is a born digital title like this one is, you have the option of creating an extract from the publisher PDF that they've given us. So we have here the entire file of the book that the publisher has given us, so we can create an extract from that. However, if that wasn't an option, what you can also do is you can upload a file of your own or use a crowdsourced extract. So these are scans uploaded by other HEIs under the terms of the license. If there are crowdsourced files and they're available for you to use under the terms of the license, they'd be found here. And there's none for this one, but you would see in a second I'll add a document and you'll see what it looks like. So if you want to add your own scan, you would click here, add document, and a little menu would come up confirming how and why everything looks. So let's say this one's colour, it's print, it's OCR'd, and then we would choose a file to upload. I've got a dummy file here that I'll use, which is just the DCS terms of use. And then that would appear here. So if there are other crowdsourced scans from other HEIs, if there's one that matches exactly what you're looking for, you'll see here there's a little golden star to show that it's a perfect match. Of course, this one is an ideal exact match because, of course, it's the one that I've used myself. You also have the option to preview any files that are there, and that's just helpful just to check that the page range is correct, that that it looks fine, it's not blurred or sort of skewed. As I said, this is a dummy file, so it's not a real book. So when you've chosen what file you're using, you would click select. And then finally, you have the option to generate the link, like so. So this is the link that students will follow to access the content. If you set up an integration with your RMLS, the link will automatically populate your reading list, but if not, you can manually share it. So as here, you've got the email to lecturer button. As I said before, if you've got a lecturer already added to this request, it will email to them automatically. You won't need to do that. But of course, you can just copy the link yourself and then just manually email it or share it with anyone you want. It's always useful to follow the link yourself just to check that it looks fine. And this will be the plain PDF, and it will open in whatever default PDF reader that you're using. We tend to use Cortex, so I've got a Cortex link. I'm using the demo site at the moment, so this link won't work. It's a fake link, but I have a Cortex link that I've got from earlier, and this is how it will look. So the first thing you'll see is the copyright page that the DCS adds to all the scans, and that gives details of the extract and permissions for who can use it. If you add your logo, as Claire mentioned earlier, it will appear here in the top right. Of course, this is just the generic DCS logo, but it would be your university's logo that would be here in the top right. So the Cortex reader has two versions, the standard and the advanced, and this is the question that we get a lot. Who can use it? What do you need to do? Do you need to log in? Anyone with the link who is authenticated can access this without needing an account with Cortex. You can read the file, and this is how it will look, and you're able to sort of view it, and that's fine. But the advanced version allows you to do several things. You can highlight the text and make any notes you want. You can add any sort of annotations, and you can share those with other users as well. There's also a read aloud function where you highlight the text and it will, as it implies, read it to you. And for that, you will need to create an account. The reason for that is just that it remembers who you are and what you've done. If you don't have an account, it won't save those changes. So if you wanted to sort of do this and add a note, you could leave that for someone else to say this is something they will look at. You will need an account for that. So your students will need to create an account with Cortex, but they don't need to do that. Anyone can use Cortex without having to log in. And that is about everything, I think. So I'll just head back to the presentation now. Monica, could you bring the presentation up again, please? I don't seem to have it here.
You're on mute, Monica. I'm not sure if you're saying that we're going to hand over to Margaret.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the presentation should be on the screen now. Margaret, are you ready for your slides?
I'm ready. Thank you.
Would you like me to? You've got it.
Yeah, I've got it. Thank you. Right. Okay. As the subject of this webinar is back to basics, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to go back to the basics of the higher education license from 2024 to 2027, the particular terms that are associated with it. So in particular, I will talk a bit about what can be copied and what can't be copied, how much can be copied, what are suitable source copies, and who you can share these copies with. So what can be copied? You can copy text and still images from print publications and digital publications that are owned by your university. So that, as you can see on the list, it's books, journals, magazines, reports, all sorts of things. And you can also copy from ebooks and e-journals if the publisher has opted in. Not all digital publications are part of this, but most of them are, and most of the mainstream publishers certainly participate in this. So I want to go into a bit more detail about this. So you don't have to guess whether you can copy something. We've got a check permissions tool on the CLA website. And as Claire and Stephen mentioned, you can also check permissions via the DCS. That'll do it for you pretty much automatically there. The check permissions tool works best if you have an ISBN or ISSN to add. You can search by title, but it can be a bit hit and miss and take a lot of time. So if you can search by number, I would definitely recommend it. And it will tell you whether you can photocopy and scan or either or. There are some gaps, where titles aren't found, but and in that case, you get some information how you can work it out yourself, or you just might want to get in touch with us and ask, which is also fine. So most UK publications are covered for photocopying and scanning. Even if the publisher is not directly mandating its indemnity policy by the CLA license. So you should be fine there, unless, of course, the publisher has totally excluded their content and they don't want to participate in the CLA license provisions. There's a separate list, and also the check permissions tool will indicate whether something's excluded. CLA also have agreements with organizations similar to CLA in other countries, the International Repertoire Exchange agreements, and you can, in all cases, you can share photocopies. Very often you can also do scans, or you can even use digital publications. It's all dependent on the agreement that CLA have. And again, there's a website where you can click on individual countries, territories, and check what the conditions are. Sometimes there are exclusions, but quite often they're not. You don't have to do that because the check permissions tool should tell you. But it's nice to have a backup if you want to work something out yourself. CLA also have direct mandates from publishers. Most of the multinationals like Taylor & Francis or Elsevier, that sort of thing. That means you can copy regardless of the book, where the book was published, and that's most of their content, and usually all digital content as well. So that's quite helpful for you and for us to have that. And similar to the overseas publications, we have an agreement with CCC in the USA that covers permissions for US publications, and that's a bit more involved because you can photocopy and scan only if the ISBN or ISSN has been opted in by the publisher. And I know that causes a lot of confusion and frustration, because it could be that the hardback is covered for scanning, but the paperback isn't. And it's not ideal. But unfortunately, CLA are bound by the conditions of the agreement with CCC. So we can't override. So that means you might want to contact the publisher direct and ask if you can have scanning permissions, or you get clearance elsewhere. And there's also a condition called CCC Electronic Rights Works, which specifies that even if you could make a scan, you should check whether there's a suitable digital edition available. So that might be a subscription or something, which is another complication with the CCC agreement. And it's down to interpretation what a suitable digital copy is. But yeah, I mean, understand it's not ideal. You can also copy images. Obviously, if they're part of a chapter or article, you can just go ahead and copy them as part of the chapter or article. But you can also take out the image on its own. It's a process called, what they call disembedded images. And if you do that, maybe for a presentation or something, you don't need to report these as digital copies. Likewise, you can copy book covers and you wouldn't have to report them either. It's only if they're part of a chapter or article that you're copying anyway. Yeah, there are also some exclusions. I'm not going to go through them in great detail. I just wanted to mention here that newspapers are on the list. And obviously, if you have an NLA education establishment license, then you can copy newspapers anyway. It's just that they're not part of the CLA license repertoire, which is books, journals, and magazines. Right. So how much can be copied? You can copy a whole chapter, or you can copy 2 whole articles from a magazine or journal issue. That's new to these set of terms and conditions. Previously, it was 1 article, but now you can copy 2. And if a journal issue or magazine issue is dedicated to a particular theme, you can copy any number of articles. So you could, in theory, copy the whole magazine or journal if that's what you need. There's some other guidance here for special scenarios, but the alternative then is to copy up to 10%. So, for example, I don't know, maybe you have a book that's 300 pages. You could either copy 30 pages from the book, or you could copy the whole chapter. If that was, for example, 40 pages, you could copy that anyway under the chapter provisions, because even though it's more than 30 pages, so you basically want to pick the option that works out best for you there. Right, if you find that 10% is not enough and you need to copy more, CLA have set up a service called Second Extract Permission Service, or SEPS, and that would allow you to copy another chapter or article, or 10%, or whatever it may be. There are some restrictions with this. You can only use that content for 1 academic year. If you want to use it again in the following academic year, you would have to pay again. I mean, that's another caveat here. You have to pay per page and per student. And not all publishers participate in this service. So it's not mainstream. It's mainly UK publishers who've opted in because they set the price per page. But it's there if you need it. I mean, you don't have to use it. It's quite nice to set it up in case you do want it, but it's just another option if you do find you need to copy more. The alternative would always be to contact the rights holder or publisher to ask them for permission. So we've talked about, I think we've talked about source copies. So suitable source copy is quite important aspect of the CLA license, because the university has to own or subscribe to the publication before they can make copies from it. So copy from a tutor, their personal copy or personal subscription would not be suitable. It has to actually be paid for by the university. But that also means that you can use copyright fee paid copies that you might have bought through EHAS or another document supply service. As long as the copyright fee is paid, it's considered a suitable source copy, provided obviously the other conditions are met and you can actually copy from it. You can also include media monitoring material from obviously magazines and journals, not newspapers. That would be covered by the NLA, but that would also be an option there. So, and importantly, who can you share these copies with? And the primary purpose of the CLA license is to provide teaching resources. So anything that's course related, you can share with your UK campus-based students. If you've got distance learners, they can have copies. Also non-credit bearing students, so anyone who's on a course that doesn't lead to an accreditation can have copies. And also overseas campus-based students, if that's something that your university is engaged in, and whether that is a partner organization or a campus that is run by the university, that's all an option there. You can also share copies for non-course related copying activities. That might be something administrative, maybe your HR department or finance department wants to share copies with staff. You can share copies with staff of regulatory agencies and collaborative research projects, and UUK and Guild HE members can also use copies for commercial research and consultancy. There's some conditions attached to that. There's guidance on the website if that's something you're interested in. And I just wanted to end on a positive note here. These are figures over the last 40 years for all CLA licenses, not just education. But I thought it's nice to see what an amazing difference the CLA license has been able to make to the creative industries, both in terms of royalties that were paid out, but also to see how many students and universities as customers have benefited from copying easily and legally without too much trouble and too much time and additional cost. And that's where I will end. So if you've got any questions, happy to answer them later. And there you go. Thank you.
Margaret, would you like to answer a question just now, or would you like to wait until the Q&A?
I don't mind. We can wait till the Q&A if that's tidier.
It's up to you.
Yeah, okay, let's wait till the end then.
I'll steal control back. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
So, final update we have for you is just on DCS, EHAS update. This was probably mentioned last month, but just recapping, there's a couple of changes to the way that EHAS orders will work going forward. So firstly, as Joe Cox from the British Library mentioned last month, the service charges will increase for orders made from the 1st of October, so that's yesterday. Just to note, this is also outlined on the DCS dashboard section. So for those who pay monthly, the cost will increase to £11.90, and for those who are prepaid, the cost will increase to £10.90. And then since the last webinar, we've also been consulting on the max cost limit. So as a reminder, that's the process that we've developed for copyright fee paid requests, which strikes a balance between cost control for you and level of administration for everyone else. So when an order is placed, the British Library will check the copyright fee for a title, and if it's within the agreed limit, they'll go ahead and process it without having to confirm. But if it's above a max cost, they'll come back to you with the price and check whether or not you'd like to proceed, just in case it's, vastly high and sort of more than you want to pay. And to date, that limit has always been £40. Sorry, that's the whole process of how that works. But recently, the British Library have noticed that a number of items have had a copyright fee of £41, meaning it's a lot of admin, both for them and for you and for us, all for the sake of £1. many of those are US titles, so it's possible there's been an update from CCC or it's related to exchange rates. So we had a consultation on this, and many of you, thank you, responded to the consultation around increasing the max cost. So the long and short of it is that we'll increase the copyright fee check limit to £45, which will allow for a bit of future proofing and also a bit of leeway in case there are exchange rate fluctuations and so forth. Okay, so now we'll head to the Q&A. So we only have the one question that I've seen so far, which was from Margaret. But if anyone else has any questions at all, please do go ahead.
Great. Shall we start with Heather's for Margaret? She says, thank you, Margaret. Could you explain a little more about the personal copy option on the DCS content request screen as it relates to sourcing an item? We've received a query from a lecturer who requires an article from an issue of a journal. We are subscribed to the journal, but the issue they require material from is not in our subscription's date range. The lecturer has asked if we can copy the article from a copy of the issue they own. Unfortunately, we were not able to source the article through eBooks.
Right. The expectation is that you try to purchase a copy of the article by whichever means, whether it's secondhand market or directly from the publisher. If you really can't get hold of it, then it is okay to use the tutor's copy. So it shouldn't be a routine way of doing it. You should try to purchase it and pay for it. But if there's no option because it's out of print and really not available on the secondhand market, then it's okay to use the tutor's copy.
Great. And then we have Lee Jones who asks, how do we process non-course related material? Do these requests still need to be attached to a module or a course code?
I think that's almost a DCS question because you probably, I think in the past we've recommended setting up a dummy course for that sort of scenario, because if you're using digital copies, they still would have to be part of the annual reporting process. And the DCS, if you're a DCS user, that would be the way to do your reporting and manage your reporting. So it would be good to have them in the DCS. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure if there are recommendations from the DCS team on that.
That was basically, yes, what I was going to say. Whenever we had questions of this nature, the usual answer is set a dummy course up, because the important thing is that it gets counted in your sort of annual reporting. And the easiest way to do that is to have a link that's available for it that will sort of count it and sweep it up with the rest of the stuff you're using.
Great. And then John Wawa asks, what special provision for students with disabilities? Special provisions, what do you mean, John?
Well, I mean, I can talk a little bit about the general context, because obviously you can share copies under an exception to copyright for print-disabled students. That is already quite comprehensive. You can also use the CLA license if that works out better. And the CLA license fully supports copying for disabled students to make all the copies accessible in whichever way you need to, whether that's for a blind student who needs a copy in Braille, or dyslexic students where you need to change the page layout or the colors or the size of the print, whatever it may be. So that's all fully supported there in the license.
We actually have on the our knowledge base website, we do actually have a section on accessibility. I'm just going to link the document in the chat just now that goes through all of them.
Yeah, I guess in terms of the DCS, you might want to store the copy differently, so it's not necessarily part of the repository. Is that right? I mean, I'm just guessing here, but if it's a special copy, it's for a disabled student, then it should only really be accessible to the student in question and not to the wider community.
So there's various things that Cortex has available for accessibility options, and a lot of them are outlined in this document here. But for those who haven't read it yet, so you're able to change the background color, magnify the content. There's also obviously the read aloud function, which is very useful for a lot of students. You can navigate to any subheading or heading in the content you're looking at. And there's also alternative text descriptions for graphics and images. It's something we're always working on, so I think it's an ongoing thing. We've got another question. If in the future we have distance learners from overseas, for example, from a master's course, would they need to be covered by a different license?
Sorry, can you say that again? I missed that in the chat.
If in the future we have distance learners from overseas, for example, from a master's course, would they need to be covered by a different license?
No, distance learners are all part of the CLA license provisions. Distance learners are basically any students who don't regularly attend teaching on the campus. Some of them are solely online, self-paced courses possibly, and they would already be covered as long as they're registered with the university. So that you shouldn't have to purchase a separate license. Is something we try to avoid and try to include everyone in that package. If you mean overseas campus-based students, that's a little bit different because the students might be based at a campus overseas, but registered on a course with you, and you can, as long as the copies are made in the UK, then they can be shared with overseas campus-based students. I hope that answers the question. Otherwise, feel free to send me an email and we can pick it up from there.
Marcus Gray says, am I missing a way to locate requests in the DCS once they've been rejected? I don't think they're in either active requests or complete requests. That is a good question. So one thing you can do is by running an HI report, it will show you all the rejected requests, that you've had. I'm just going to check if there's any other way to find the rejected requests. I don't believe there is. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Bethan. Bethan's just said she runs a weekly rejected request report. It's probably the quickest way to find. Quickest way to find those, because otherwise you're just looking at them individually. So yes, that's probably the best. Emma has said, I can't download or open the PDF that I uploaded in the chat a minute ago. Oh, that's annoying. 1 second. Okay, I'll email out the PDF later, I think, because at the moment it's really the easiest option. One more question. I asked this question earlier. Stephen, thank you for your presentation on how to process the requests. Are you able to provide us the workflow step-by-step in bullet point, please? Yeah, I can certainly do that. I can email that later with the rest of the documents after the webinar's done. I'll make a note of that.
There's another question from James. I just quickly want to say I think I might have to go back to view the collaborative working arrangements because they've changed a little bit. I would say that sharing copies with other universities is only really possible if both universities own a copy, but like I said, there've been some changes and I would like to go back to the terms, and I'll send you an email, James, on that and get back to you to confirm how that might work.
It's one slightly that I missed. Is Cortex free to use? Yeah, it's part of the sort of DCS package that you get, so it's completely free to use, and that's the case whether it's the standard or the login version. Missed any other questions? I'm just scrolling up to see. I think that's all of them. Yeah. Cortex Advanced version is the only one that can enable read aloud. Do you know, it was, but I think they've changed that recently. I need to check, but I think at one point it was the only version that could read aloud, but I think now the non-advanced version can read aloud too. Can anyone confirm that? Monica, Claire, Margaret?
I think the last I checked, it was still the advanced reader, yeah, but I haven't checked, so I can double check.
Something they're planning to change, or if they've already changed it, but it certainly was something that was going to be changed.
We'll get back to you.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that
one. Helen asks, Margaret, can you please let me know the outcome for clarifying about inter HEI and inter-academic sharing content,
Yeah, sure.
as they are also having a similar situation at Edgehill.
Okay. Yeah, will do.
Great. Any more questions? Well, that was very informative. Thank you so much for all of your questions and for your attention and for coming along to the webinar this month. We will be having another webinar next month. The topic is to TBC, but hopefully we will catch you there. If you have any further questions, feel free to email us at the support desk as usual, or email Margaret or Claire directly. They should be able to help.